This morning, I made my debut on live radio with NewsTalk1010 and More in the Morning, hosted by John Moore. Now, I'm going to show you or play for you the entire sequence here. It's about, I think, a 12-minute roundtable. We talk about Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, the Trump-Kanye thing. We talk about Canadian ISIS wives, and a whole other range of topics. Now, this, as I said, this was my first time on live radio, and it was really enjoyable. I guess I kind of have experience here doing something very similar, but it is different when you are surrounded by people who are also into the same topics that you're discussing, and you're going to see in many cases have a very different view on those topics than you do. So I'm going to play for you this entire sequence. Actually, before going, I just want to mention, so NewsTalk1010 is owned by a company called Bell Media. Now, if you're Canadian, you know who Bell Media is, but Bell Media is a company that I worked for 8 years ago as a video editor, editing news for CTV. So it's kind of cool to have worked at this company 8 years ago as an editor, and now 8 years later, I'm part of the on-air talent. It's kind of cool. So I just wanted to mention that. Now, let me play this 12-minute discussion, and afterwards, I'm going to talk about an answer I gave during this roundtable that I didn't really like, and I'm going to correct it afterwards. So listen.
Where the news comes to talk, it's the Roundtable. Round 1 at 7:45. Round 2 at 8:45. Weekday mornings on More in the Morning.
On Round 1 this morning, Dave Trafford is here from Weekend Mornings on News Talk 1010. Jerry Agar from The Jerry Agar Show. Amanda Galbraith from Navigator Communications, former Director of Communications for the Mayor, John Tory. And David Dole making his debut. He's the host of Rational National on YouTube. What is that?
It is a YouTube show where I do news commentary and political commentary. Actually, a lot of American, but also Canadian news.
All right. It's the new form of writing columns. But it's on camera.
Why do you concentrate on American? I'm just curious.
Audience is much larger.
But yeah.
I mean, that's
so's the competition.
Yeah. Well, that's true, but it's also just a good way to. I mean, I really enjoy American politics. I find it entertaining as well as informative. So.
Also, we get to watch it as bystanders most of the time. So
yeah, exactly. It doesn't really affect us.
It's a soap opera.
Yeah.
So the Ford administration has canceled an increase to the beer tax. Amanda, you do messaging in politics. It's about a penny a beer, but all people are going to see is, wait a second, they're not taxing beer? I like it.
Yeah, no, another Friday win for the Ford government. They delivered cheaper beer once again. So, I mean, these guys know how to do these. I call them head nodders. They're small little announcements, but people talk about them, listen to them, and understand them quickly. So
okay, but I was saying earlier in the show, Dave Trafford, cutting taxes is easy. Paying the bills, not so easy.
Yeah, and that's going to be the issue that they'll have to face. I mean, and they've got the deficit. What is it now? $15 billion, and so that'll be Vic's job. It's the premier can kind of say, "Yahoo! I've got cheaper beer. Vic, fix it." So that's going to be his job over the next 4 years.
I don't think this is cheaper beer. This is not more expensive beer. Canadians pay more for beer tax than almost any country in the world. 47% of what you pay for beer, I think, is tax. Some of it tax on tax because there are a lot of taxes involved in there. So there's a point at which you just say enough.
I like beer.
Yeah, I don't think the Ontario government, by the way, has a revenue problem. I think they have a spending problem.
Yeah, but how much is this really? So this is a few cents. So Doug Ford doesn't increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, yet he saves people a few cents on beer. I mean, what is this really in people's pockets? Do people actually feel this? To me, this is a huge distraction from actual issues. So he cuts the cap and trade. He doesn't increase the minimum wage. He rips up a workers' rights bill, but he gives us a few cents on beer. Like, thanks, Doug. That's great.
And it's working.
That's the problem.
Yeah. What do we do with the ISIS wives? Global doing a very revealing feature report where they talked to 3 Canadian women who were in refugee camps in Syria. There are 7 kids with the women. They want to come back to Canada. They say they were duped. One of them, for example, fell in love with a guy online and thought she was going to Lebanon and ended up being an ISIS housewife in Syria.
I want to go back to Canada. I just want to be sure that my kids actually have a life, a normal life, and, just like start again everything. My kids are Canadian citizens. They die. They deserve to die. For what?
All right, Jerry, you're an empty nester now, so you're going to open up your house?
That's actually not a bad proposal.
Right.
I think these kids clearly need better parents. I feel very badly for the kids, but if you take the kids out of the equation, I mean, I think the nicest thing we could do is shoot a series called The Real Canadian Housewives of Terrorism, but we have to shoot it in Syria. There's no reason to bring these people back.
I still think that would be a hilarious TV show, because mostly it would be about the women fighting over their lack of what they don't own. But Amanda, a purist will say you owe a Canadian citizen, no matter what they've done, the same consular services and the same level of citizenship.
Yeah, and I think these women should avail themselves of consular services as much as anyone else would be entitled to. I'll be blunt, I haven't watched the whole thing. My first blush was I don't have a ton of sympathy for people that put themselves, like if you were going to move to a country, not knowing what people do and, I don't know. How do you go there? Like, what do you think he does? He's like a car salesman and then he turns out to work for ISIS? Like, this just sounds bizarre to me. So obviously these kids should be taken care of. But I don't have a lot of sympathy for this. I'll be blunt.
I think we should repatriate them. That you have to put yourself in their position. So they don't, when you're in a position like this, you don't necessarily understand that you're being brainwashed. And there is ways that we can bring them back and educate them.
And give them $10.5 million.
Well, no one's saying that, but just because they've been put in a situation where they are in this really dire situation.
Well, they put themselves in the situation, right?
Yeah, but
right. So do people who surf in hurricanes, though.
Well, also idiots, frankly. Like, I'm not saying these women are idiots,
right? But we don't bar them from the hospital.
No, I don't. Which is why I'm saying avail yourself to consular services. But you made your bed.
But then kids are affected for the
totally, which I think the kids are different. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've just opened up the possibility of possibly taking them in.
You should, Jerry.
Well, I think you should.
I'm a hell of a dad.
Dave Trafford, is it time for us to strike up the chorus from Les Mis, bring them home?
Well, I get that there's consular services there that they have to, they should avail themselves of. But I keep coming back. I think we're having a conversation around here making adult decisions.
Yeah.
And sadly, they have made adult decisions that are affecting their kids adversely. But boy, I don't know. How could you on the one hand suggest that it was an adult decision, I'm free to go and do this and be in a precarious situation, and then not have to be responsible for it. On the other hand, I think David's point is around the $10.5 million. No, nobody's saying they're going to pay them that, but that's going to factor into the decision as to how government handles this.
Yep.
Just when you thought Giorgio Mammalidi couldn't have a dumber idea than you've ever had before.
Wait, we have more.
I know, really. It's like
so bad.
Cancel 311.
Yeah, call Giorgio.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Amanda, I've used 311. It's fantastic.
It is. They answer it all the time. And the other thing I will say, like, respectfully, there are some counselors down there that work all the time that are all around. Maybe they were all at Mr. Mammalides' constituency office, but when I walked by the counselor's office, it was always dark. Like, no one was there. So if you're calling Giorgio Mammalides' office with 311 emergency, like, ain't nothing going to be answered. So I think this is a terrible idea. And 311 is fabulous.
Maybe Giorgio's misdialing. He's not doing 311 in the right
Sir,
order.
you do not need the police for a pothole, sir.
Back off from the 900 numbers, Giorgio.
David Dole, I wish 311 was on Twitter because it would even be more effective. But 311 works. Why would you cancel something that works?
Yeah, see, I've used it maybe a couple times, but clearly people do use it, and I don't see anyone calling. I haven't heard anyone try to get rid of it until now. It seems sort of out of the blue, and really, what's the purpose?
Nike has signed a deal, as we said just before the roundtable, with a guy who has cerebral palsy, and he is a runner. Dave, I'll start with you because you're a runner. This is sort of a win-win after, Colin Kaepernick was a risk. There's no risk to making a sponsorship deal with a guy who's overcome disabilities to become a runner.
But I think if Tony Chapman were here, he'd just tell you it's right on brand, because the brand really is about what your audience expects of you. And the whole notion that Nike is a running shoe company goes out the window. Nike is about accomplishment.
It's a lifestyle.
It's about confidence. It's about being able to, overcome obstacle. And it kind of harkens back to one of the early sponsorships they did when they first introduced Just Do It. And it was a guy who was a runner who ran, 10 marathons in a year. He was this exceptional athlete, just picked the right parents, but he lived with HIV. And that was the message at the end of it. So you can do anything. So this kind of falls in line with that.
You know, that video is emotional to watch. I mean, it opens with him running, and he clearly has some physical struggles to run. He's not the Oregon Ducks' #1 runner by any means.
Runs faster than us.
Well, that's not that high a bar to get over, John, these days. But that said, I mean, I used to run in those kinds of events, and God bless the Oregon Ducks running team, by the way, first of all, for having him on the team, because he says I always come last in the races. It's really the effort that he exemplifies, the can-do spirit that he exemplifies, and I think this is one of the coolest things that Nike has done, and it's an emotional video to watch. You should find it.
Yep.
Ontario Real Estate Association is calling on the province to change a few things about real estate in the province. One of the ones that I am excited about, though, is we're going to have transparent, open bidding. And I don't know if anybody's had the experience I had, but I was bidding on a house against 5 other people, and they wouldn't even tell you what the highest bid was. Maybe it was mine. That drove me crazy. I thought that was a shakedown. Is this a positive development, David?
I think it's good. I like that it's up to the seller if they want to do this or not. But see, people my age, I'm a millennial, we don't buy homes. So in 19...
you can't afford them? Or
yeah, so in 1973, I looked this up. In 1973, adjusted for inflation, the average house was around $200,000 with the median income at $55,000 a year. Today, the average home is $510,000 with the median income at $49,000 a year. So we just can't afford homes. But this step, I think, hopefully would open it up to possibly homes being potentially less if you don't have to overbid to end up getting the home.
Yeah. I mean, Amanda, what's really going on behind the scenes, of course, is that real estate agents risk being Ubered, as Tony Chapman likes to say, that, 4 to 5% for what they bring to the party is a bit generous these days. So they're trying to come up with ways to make it palatable to continue to do the real estate business.
Yeah, well, they should be Ubered. This industry is ripe for disruption. And having, I'm a cusp millennial, but I'm a millennial. I owned a house, and that cusp millennial I call myself. My colleague is cusp adjacent. But I bought a house and we lost a bunch on bidding, and it was nuts. And one of them went for 100 over. I'm like, how do I even know? It's like blindly throwing something into a hole. So yeah, the transparency makes sense. When I bought my condo, I actually had transparency on buying, and that was helpful. I didn't overpay.
All right. Are we going to then extend this, say, to public contracts? All of that will be opened up now.
Well, they're trying to underbid each other.
Well,
yeah, they actually do.
Okay. Regardless, I mean, then they'd even further underbid if that was the case. Wait a minute. X corporation said they'd do it for $500 million. Let's do $490.
Yeah, except it's not the same thing, because you're talking about how you might build a certain specific building, as opposed to and your way of building it may be more efficient, more cost effective than the way I build it, as opposed, and we don't know that in terms of the pricing, but it's only Amanda's house that we're going to buy. And
I understand that, but if we're on the transparency track, let's stay there.
Sure, but this is I applaud them for doing this, and I know Tim has been on this for a while, and I talked to a former guy who had Tim's job, and I can't remember his name now. We were talking about this very thing on one of the shows about a month or so ago. This has just led to what Amanda's talking about. It's been cover for the real estate industry to have bidding wars, to have $100,000 over. You have no idea. This is what has driven up the cost of housing in Toronto and elsewhere, where it's now unaffordable for a guy like David to buy a house. That's been the thing that drives me crazy about it.
Well, supply and demand plays a huge part of it.
Well, for sure, but they have manipulated this whole situation around transparency to be able to drive prices up artificially, skyrocketing to price you out of the market.
All right, we're almost out of time. Any thoughts on Kanye West's visit to the Oval Office?
A meeting of the narcissists. This is so look, narcissism is fine in an artist like Kanye West. In a president like Donald Trump or any politician, it's not.
Not good political messaging, Amanda?
I actually think it's fine if you think about Trump's audience. I also think everyone going around saying Kanye West has mental, health challenges, he's talked about that openly. We applaud him when he's producing albums, but when he's saying a political statement we don't agree with, he gets, whatever.
Well, when he's talking about an atomic plane to the president of the United States, who's a reality show star.
He does that everywhere else too. Like, he's an artist. He wants to support Donald Trump. We don't care when other artists come in and support Democratic presidents and say nutty
he should
things.
Totally be allowed to talk about, to definitely view his opinions, but we're also allowed to criticize them.
For sure, but I feel like the avalanche of criticism to Kanye West versus every other artist that supports a Democrat is totally
because
different.
His opinions are dumb.
Well, no, but
believe me, there's a lot of dumb artists on the left.
There's also a lot of dumb people that elected Donald Trump,
but to the level of Kanye West, I mean, it's something else.
All right, we got to call it there. Thank you all very much, David. I hope you'll come back. Good to have you. It's 8 o'clock.
How about that? So that was cool. First time on radio, and I have to say I'm pretty happy that I got the last word. But you know, that is likely not going to happen too many times. Now, so let me just say again, it was so cool for them to have me on. Everyone was so nice, both on air and behind the scenes. The host, the producers, the guests that were there, the talent coordinator that actually got me on that spot. So everybody there is just fantastic. Now, let me get to the response that I gave that I didn't like and that I wish I could do over. And that's actually the very first question that was really just about, why do I cover American politics? So I didn't really expect to really talk about myself much at all. So I never really, me as somebody who just kind of produces my show and I don't have to, or I don't really network too much, I don't have any quick answers as to why I do what I do. I just know that I enjoy doing it. So when somebody asks me, why do you cover American politics as a Canadian? For me, it's just like, I don't know. Like, I like it. So I try to give like a better answer, like, oh, the audience is bigger, which is true. But if I don't like covering American politics, I don't really care what the size of the audience would be. But I actually do enjoy covering American politics. I enjoy discussing it. So the very first, I mean, just to give you some background, the reason I got into politics to begin with is because of Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert. So I watched their shows a lot. I grew up watching them, and I began to learn about what was going on in America. And that was sort of my introduction into politics, even though I was a Canadian, or I am a Canadian. So I think that's what really spurred it. So I still don't really know how to answer that question, because it seems so basic just to say, yeah, I enjoy covering I cover American politics because I enjoy covering it. But also, I mean, there is some truth to the fact that what America does affects everybody else. So a Trump presidency has clearly affected Canada in a number of ways, whether it's the NAFTA trade deal or the continued relationship with the Saudis and other world leaders. I mean, there's this influence that the U.S. has, even in something that may seem small, but it's big in my opinion, is the relationship with drug policy. So the reason that psychedelics, for example, are outlawed worldwide is because of the U.S. America pushed to cut out all psychedelic drugs back in the 70s. And that's why there has been this limited research into the positive effects of drugs like psilocybin or MDMA. Now we are finally seeing some of that science come through, because people are realizing that psychedelic drugs can actually help with a lot of mental illness, a lot of mental health issues. So I'm glad we are pushing back on that. But I mean, again, this shows you the power that America has had in the past and continues to have today. So I don't know. I feel like there's a better answer in there somewhere for me to discuss why I do cover American politics as a Canadian, but one day I'll get it. And just to give, I guess, a quick behind the scenes of how this is all set up, you get the topics about an hour beforehand. So this was recorded live at 7:45 in the morning. I got there about 7 o'clock. The producer emails you the topics. You look over them. You research if you need to, and then you're on air 40 minutes later. So it's a quick process. It was super cool. The whole thing was fun. I'm going to do it again, I think, on the 25th. So listen for that. I'll tweet about it when the date happens. So again, I like this. And this gave me a window into realizing, hey, maybe I should do a podcast. So that's potentially something that is coming down the pipe. I had planned to do or start a podcast once I hit 500 patrons on Patreon. I'm at 450 right now. So if you want me to start a podcast, you better sign up, patreon.com/therationalnational. And yeah, maybe you'll hear more audio from me. We'll see. All right. Let me know what you thought of my appearance on that radio show below. And thanks for listening. Bye.